Hey everyone, Forrest here with Rocky Mountain School of Photography, and if you're tired of carrying around 15 external hard drives everywhere you go and labeling them and having them strewn across shelves all throughout your house, I might have a solution for you. This very affordable box from QNAP is a direct attached storage device. And what it can do is give you a ton of redundant, fast storage for your photos and videos. Let's talk about it. So before we get too far into this, I want to start by saying that this is a sponsored video. QNAP did provide this for the purposes of this video, and for that reason, I'm actually going to call this a product feature, not necessarily a review. Now, I'm still going to tell you the negatives, but I just feel weird with reviews and being sponsored, things like that. I will say though, very straight up, that QNAP has no control over what I'm going to say in this video. I also want to shout out Seagate. Seagate are the hard drives that we use in our NAS here at school for all of our networked storage, and also Seagate has provided the hard drives inside of this enclosure, again, for the purposes of this review. So special thanks to QNAP and Seagate for sponsoring this video. So I want to start off by talking about what a DAS is. So like I said, it stands for direct attached storage. And basically it's a big box that plugs into your computer, and to your computer, it appears as a single hard drive. Now what's neat about this is it actually has 4 hard drive bays. So there's some fancy hardware inside of this enclosure that decides how those 4 hard drives interface with your computer. So before we get too far down that road, I want to jump back and just say, what does this come with? So you can buy this a variety of different ways. B&H sells it unfilled, where all of the drive bays are empty. They also sell filled versions where there's drives already pre-installed, but basically very easy. You can take it out of the box, install the different drives, and get it up and running any way you want to. And what's cool is you have control over how big of hard drives to put inside of this enclosure. So as a quick example, if I pop one of these out, here is one of the drives. In this case, Seagate gave us 4 terabyte hard drives for this enclosure, making the total enclosure capacity 16 terabytes. Now, depending on how you configure this device, you might not get 16 terabytes of usable storage, but that's how much physical storage exists inside of this device. And that's one really cool thing about this. You can customize and tailor the amount of total storage to your needs as a photographer or videographer. The device was very nicely packaged. It includes the power supply as well as a USB Type A to USB Type C cable. I do wish there was a Type C to Type C cable as well, but you know, it is what it is in this world today. But overall, really nice packaging, fit and finish, instructions, setup guide, very clear to get this configured the way that you want to. And I was really pleased with the whole unboxing experience of getting this thing up and running. So now let's get into the setup. Those of you who have watched my previous NAS videos know that setting up a NAS is a little bit of an involved process. Generally, I like to tell people take about an hour to get your NAS configured, from plugging it into your router, connecting your computer to the network, creating a volume, all that kind of stuff. It just takes time. Well, a DAS is totally different. The setup process on this is very, very quick. In the back of the device, or on the back of the device, there are 3 little dip switches, 1, 2, and 3. And depending on how you switch your dip switches before you turn on the device for the first time, it can configure it in a variety of different modes. Now, you're not set in stone once you turn it on and it's configured in that certain mode. You can always reconfigure. However, switching between modes of operation with this device does wipe the data off the drives. So do be aware you probably want to get this set up correctly the first time. Once you get those dip switches set on the mode of operation that you like, you plug this into the computer. You may have to format it using disk utility, or in Windows, just right-clicking and going to format. But either way, as soon as that's done, this drive is ready for operation. I would estimate the total setup time to be about 5 minutes, which is really awesome, and anybody with really any computer skill level is gonna be able to get one of these running right out of the gate. So let's talk about those little dip switches and how they work. This drive, and really all DASs and NASs, have the ability to operate in different RAID modes. RAID is probably something you've seen if you've done any research on this type of device. RAID stands for Redundant Array of Independent Disks. And basically what it means is the 4 drives in this case work together to present themselves to the computer as a single storage device. Now, before we get too far down into the RAID discussion, I do also want to say that this can be configured as 4 independent disks as well. So if you wanted to plug this into your computer and 4 little hard drives popped up, that is totally possible. You can also configure this in JBOD mode, which is just a bunch of disks. That's actually what that stands for, where it will appear to the computer as one hard drive, and it'll fill each one up sequentially when you put files onto it. I don't really recommend either of those modes. I think really the user friendliness of this comes out when we start discussing RAID. There's 3 different RAID modes of operation that we can use: RAID 0, RAID 10, or 1+0, or RAID 5. RAID 0 is the one that I'm gonna strongly not recommend. RAID 0 basically means that when you put a file onto this device, it splits that file in fourths and it puts a fourth of the file on each of the 4 hard drives. That all sounds well and good, and it's a very fast mode of operation. However, if one of those 4 hard drives fails, you lose everything. RAID 10 is a combination of RAID 1 and RAID 0. Basically, the drives are paired up and you're left with that, yes, splitting of a file into halves on each drive, but also it is a mirrored copy of the other one. So basically, if you think about 2 drives working in tandem as a RAID 0 pair, another set of drives working as a RAID 0 pair, and then those are RAID 1 or mirrored to one another when using the disk. However, on most devices, the advantages of RAID 10 are that it's faster. You get a performance increase over RAID 5. However, you lose again another 25% of your storage. So if you were to configure this 16 terabyte storage device in RAID 10, you're only gonna get 8 terabytes of usable storage space. However, like I said, you will also get that redundancy of if a drive fails, you're still safe. One advantage of RAID 0 is that you do get the full capacity of the device. So if you put 16 terabytes worth of hard drives into this, you'll get 16 usable terabytes of storage. And that's not the case with RAID 5 or RAID 10. Now, RAID 5 is basically allowing one drive failure, and it uses some really advanced math. I'm not gonna get too much into how RAID 5 works. Just know that basically if you configure your device in RAID 5, you're gonna get 75% of your total storage. So in my case, with 16 terabytes of total storage, in RAID 5, I have 12 usable terabytes. Basically, one of the drives is used as a parity drive, so you're down 75% with a 4-bay DAS on your storage. So how do we break this down? I know I just said a lot of stuff, and those of you not familiar with RAID, this is like totally new to you. Well, basically the takeaway is this: RAID 0 is scary. I wouldn't recommend it unless speed is super important. More on that in a second. RAID 10 is awesome. It's faster than RAID 5, but you only get 50% of your usable storage space. Finally, RAID 5 gives us one disk that can fail. Any one of the 4 can fail, we'll be fine. However, we still retain 75% of our overall storage space in the device. Now, I mentioned speed a few times, and I think our speed discussion needs to happen now that we've talked about RAID. On most devices like this, when you start configuring different RAID modes, the speed is vastly different. And I actually tested on this device, and in every RAID mode, including JBOD, the speed was pretty much the same. And the reason, I think, is because of the cord and the connectivity type of this device. So this DAS connects with USB 3.2 Gen 1. Now I know I'm getting nerdy here, and I apologize to those of you who are not up on your USB standards, but USB 3.2 Gen 1 is really another name for original USB 3 from back in, I think, 2008. It caps out at 5 gigabits per second. Now that's not gigabytes, that's gigabits. And if we convert that down, it's round about 600 megabytes per second. Now that's the theoretical speed. In real world terms, we're usually capping out at USB 3.2 Gen 1 around 400 megabytes per second. And I basically ran this through tests, speed tests with all of the different RAID modes and JBOD. And I can safely say that with these 4 terabyte hard drives, again, 4 of them working together, in all of our RAID modes, including JBOD, I was getting about 200 megabytes per second read and 200 megabytes per second write. Now, RAID 5 was a little faster here or a little slower there, but round about 200 megabytes per second is what you can expect from this drive. The way I tested that was with a utility, as well as just copying a 20 gigabyte video file from my internal hard drive, which is a very fast SSD, onto this external device. So what that leads me to say is generally RAID 5 is one of our slower RAID modes because it has to do a lot of math when it's operating. However, with this device, because I think we're bottlenecked by the connection speed, I actually recommend for 99% of you out there, if you buy this device, configure it in RAID 5. You're gonna get that redundancy and you're also gonna get 75% of your total storage to work with. So you buy the box, you take it out of the packaging, you flip the DIP switches over to RAID 5 mode, you give it a couple minutes to do its thing, plug it into your computer, and all of a sudden you have 12 or 16 or however many terabytes of usable storage. From there, you can use this in your workflow however you want to. A couple quick things I would think of is because this isn't a NAS and it's a DAS, you can store Lightroom catalogs directly on this device. You don't need to have them on your internal and then store the photos on an external like you would with a NAS. Another cool thing that a DAS gives you is the ability to back up to utilities like Backblaze. Backblaze is a super great cloud backup utility. However, it will not back up a NAS. It will only back up direct attached storage devices. So if you wanted to utilize something like Backblaze on your computer, it would totally be able to back up the internal hard drive on your computer as well as this plugged in DAS for the same really cool price. I don't remember how expensive they are, but Backblaze is pretty affordable when it comes down to that. So if you're a photographer, I think this is a fantastic way to get your main photo drive, so to speak, a lot more storage. If you're somebody who likes to sit at your desk when you do your editing, this is a way to take all those external hard drives that you've had for years and years and years and pack them into one box. One hard drive on your computer, and it will give you that redundancy, and if you use Backblaze, it'll give you that cloud backup as well. By the way, Backblaze is not a sponsor, I just really like their services, so they're pretty cool. Backblaze, if you're watching and you want a sponsor, I'll talk about you in more videos. That would be cool. I really like your products. Finally, those of you who are video shooters, I do think that 200 megabyte per second cap that I'm seeing, regardless of what RAID type we are set to, is a little bit of a bottleneck factor when you're gonna be editing video directly off of this hard drive. If you're looking for a larger storage system for editing, say 4K video directly off of, you might look at a faster NAS or a faster DAS option. This thing is very affordable at only about $250 for the enclosure, and with that there comes some downsides when it comes to speed. However, those of you who shoot video who use an SSD as your primary storage device, this could be a fantastic way to increase that backup storage and get all of your backups in one location. All right, everybody, that is my overview of this QNAP DAS. Honestly, I am very impressed. I think this is a fantastic device for people who don't want to bother with networking things and setting up a bunch of stuff. And at the price point of, again, $250 for the enclosure, it's really hard to beat. I will also mention QNAP does have a 2-bay variety of this drive. If you are going to get that, I would recommend setting it up in RAID 1, which is where it's redundant between the 2 drive bays inside of the device. However, that could be a great option as well, and it's more affordable because you only have to fill it with 2 hard drives instead of 4. If you like this video, I would really appreciate you hitting that like button. Drop a comment down below if you have any questions, and lastly, hit subscribe to stay up to date with future videos. We put videos out every single week on photography, videography, all kinds of different stuff, so follow along, and we'd love to have you in a future video.